to 16, you don't see him there?
Welcome back to On the Job with PORAC, our podcast where we provide law enforcement updates and commentary. I'm Brian Marvel, president of PORAC.
And I'm Damon Kurtz, vice president of PORAC.
Well, we're going to just chat a little bit about post-election, post-primary election, because obviously we have an election in November, but we had some great success in the district attorney race. Up and down the state, yep.
Yeah, up and down the state. We had some really good turnout and made some changes where changes needed to be made.
Yeah. San Francisco was unique. We supported the recall of Chesa Boudin, but we weren't directly involved. And, my mantra about San Francisco is I think they have a very high tolerance for being victims, but I think even with Chesa Boudin, the district attorney, I think it reached a point to where they no longer wanted to be victims, and they wanted to change it.
Yeah, that can be said for, really the entire state of California when it comes to legislation and the legislators that they choose to elect, whether it's the attorney general level, not attorney general, but the district attorney level or whatever level of the state legislature. I use the analogy that we're the voter base in California are a bunch of frogs in a pot of water and don't understand why it's getting hotter because we keep voting for the heat to be turned up. And we're hoping that pendulum's starting to swing and people are tired of being, the victims.
Yeah, I definitely would say this. I wouldn't say the election was like a complete, hey, we're all moving to law and order now and we're going to hold criminals accountable. But I definitely felt with some of the successes we saw in the district attorney races, in the fact that Chesa Boudin was recalled. So there's a group, the Progressive Attorney Alliance, and there's 4 of them in the state, which was Chesa Boudin, George Gascon, Diane Becton out of Contra Costa County, and Tori Verber Salazar out of San Joaquin. So that was another big win for us.
Absolutely.
The fact that Ron Freitas pretty much won that outright, or at least as of this recording. He's over the 50% threshold. He's going to win that. If George Gascon, if they get the signatures, they're on the cusp of getting that. We could pretty much 3 of the 4 prosecutors' alliance, which are progressive district attorneys, will be not in office.
Yeah, and maybe we can get back to where the justice system is about victims and accountability versus the other way around where no one really meant anything and let's just let everybody out.
Yeah. And I think, unfortunately with the loss in Contra Costa County, but, that was an interesting one. You have that Open Society group gave about $2 million. They dropped like 1.5 like 10 days before the election. I was talking to several of our members in that area and region, and it was nonstop commercials for District Attorney Diane Becton. So
it just goes to show you, the more money you have, the better chance you have to get elected. And unfortunately, it's not your platform, your qualifications; it's how much money you have. And go back to my frogs in a pot of water comment. Most folks don't educate themselves on what the issues are or the candidates, and they vote straight down a party line or what they see on TV and don't take the time to really learn what's going on.
Yeah, and then turnout was just monstrously low.
Yeah, statewide, dismal.
Unbelievable. So we were really happy. 9 out of 10 wins on the district attorneys, and almost looks like I think it's going to be 9 out of 10 complete victories where there will not be any November election. So,
which is nice.
Yes. Obviously, there's a couple other races that we're closely watching. Alameda County is going to be one that we need to watch, and a couple others around the state. So really happy with the results in the district attorneys. I think that bodes well for, like you said, public safety, but it also bodes well for holding criminals accountable for their actions, because it just really seemed over the last few years that criminals were held up on a pedestal. It was other reason for why they committed the crimes and exploited other individuals as part of their crimes. And it's good to see that people are like, yeah, we're tired of this.
Absolutely, yeah.
So. Other good news for us is obviously, we sent an email out to our membership. We have a current board member who ran for a Butte County board supervisor spot. At the time of this recording, it looks like he's going to win outright. It's just going to be great to see him in there, Peter Durfee.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I think, we have a mantra. We're always asking for law enforcement, former law enforcement, to get engaged, to run for office if you have the ability to run for office or the appetite for it. And that's something you have to think about, whether you have the appetite for it. Peter didn't like what was going on in his county. He's a Chico police officer, but he ran for the Board of Supervisors there in Butte County, and he won outright at this point. He's got the 50+1. There'll be no runoff. And he's going to take an active role in the direction his county moves. And I think that's awesome. I think, for us in public safety, whether you're in law enforcement or one of the other fields, we get to see society at its lowest and its highest. And we see all portions of our communities, from the affluent to those that are, in poverty. And I think we are better suited in most cases to kind of govern from that perspective to make sure that we're doing what's right for our communities. It's not all about law and order. It's also about doing what's right for our communities. And I think that he's going to do a good job.
Yeah, and to add to that, with that perspective, Peter's going to want to work much more collaboratively with public safety when it comes to crafting local legislation at the county. And there's some irony in the fact that over the last several years we've had to deal with a lot of legislation that's affecting our profession. And I just read an article up in Washington State. This guy kidnapped a lady and gets in a car. Obviously, pursuit's on. He's calling the 911 dispatchers, telling them that this is an illegal pursuit and Seattle PD needs to break off. Because there's state law up there that says they're not allowed to pursue people. And it just goes to show you that, sometimes our elected officials are so quick to write legislation that they actually don't think it through all the way and what it's going to look like at the very end. And that's why you need people in office that are willing to work collaboratively with all stakeholders.
Absolutely. I mean, quite often that's really our role up here at PORAC, right, is going to the legislators with their proposed legislation and say, hey, you didn't think about this, right? We're there to say, yeah, but. It's unfortunate they don't think it through, and as of the last few years, don't really want to hear what our perspective is. But ultimately, they are starting to listen, and hopefully that trend continues.
Yeah, and I think it's important to recognize that, I think they were riding a wave over the last couple of years, and they just thought they could railroad over with a lot of legislation and proposals, when in reality we're starting to see the dramatic effects and consequences within our own communities of how detrimental that's been.
Yeah, it's and I think that's the pushback, and that's what we're seeing at the in the polls, and what we're seeing with the elections, the recent one. I mean, we another law enforcement, Juan Alanis, looks like he's going to make the runoff and have a chance to represent us in the state capitol at the assembly level, and we're fully behind him, and we're hoping that he's successful in the end as well.
Yeah, it'd be great to get another peace officer in the assembly, especially because of losing Jim Cooper.
Jim Cooper, yeah. And Jim Cooper, if folks don't know, he's really been one of our best advocates here in the Capitol, as in the Assembly, and he ran for Sacramento Sheriff, where he came from as a retired captain, and he won it outright quite convincingly, and he's going to go take over the Sheriff's Department there. It'll be a loss for us in the Capitol, but from the advocacy side, in the state sheriffs, I think we're gaining another ally, and I think that's good. But if we can get Juan in there to join some of the other folks in there, I think we'll be in good shape.
Yeah, and it'll help with Tom Lackey being the only other law enforcement person up there. And, if you looked at some of our previous podcasts, we had Tom Lackey was giving us a perspective of running a campaign, getting elected, and being in office. And then Peter Durfee was here, first time running for office, to get his perspective. So it'll be good to get Peter back in when he gets sworn in and have a conversation and talk to him a little bit about what his campaign was like. But like Damon said, we really would like to get more peace officers to run for office. But with that said, you have to reach out. You have to let us know that you're running for office. You have to reach out to the local chapter. You have to work on the support. It's just not going to be an automatic stamp of approval and support.
No. I mean, look, we've also seen it, and I know I have, where former peace officers get into certain offices and they aren't what we think they're going to be, and they literally, in my opinion, at times forget where they came from. But too often when it comes to elected office, people get in for the right reasons, but their motives change after getting in office from doing what's right to doing what gets reelected. And that's probably one of the biggest problems we have right now, is not doing the right thing. It's doing what they think will get them reelected, and that's a problem.
So we're really thankful and grateful for the support for Juan Alanis in Assembly District 22. So if you're in that Stanislaus County area, please vote for him in the November general election. And congratulations to Peter Durfee out of Butte County, and also Jim Cooper being the next Sacramento County Sheriff. Moving on to the Assembly races. We were involved in several of the races in the Assembly District, but one it's a little bit near and dear to me down in San Diego. Assembly District 80, we supported David Alvarez, which I think will be will be good for his district. Will be good for him to work up here in Sacramento. When he was on the city council and I was down in San Diego, he always had an open door, and that's really what we expect. We don't expect anybody that we support or endorse to be 100% with us. That's impossible. But what we like is the opportunity to be able to sit down, have candid conversations, and talk about the legislation that's being proposed.
Absolutely, that you're going to be open-minded to the conversations we're bringing. Here in the state, it's funny, at the ballot box, people tend to be completely partisan in how they vote and how they think. But the reality is we can't be that at the state capitol when we're doing our job. And even here at PORAC, we cannot be a partisan organization. We can't focus on one or the other, and particularly here in the state of California, we have to be more open to, more, I'd say, center-left ideas. I can't say that we're all open to the really far left. And so that's really been our goal, is to try and find moderate candidates on both sides of the aisle to so that when we're having discussions about legislation, there's a give and take, and that common sense prevails. Again, I always say it's usually not the what that they're trying to accomplish, it's the how. And if we can have a conversation about the how and come to a consensus on that, then we're in a good place. And it's finding candidates that we can do that with. That's the hard part.
Yeah, you really need to find candidates that are problem solvers. But when I say that, problem solvers in a sense that they're willing to speak to a lot of people to find that sweet spot in getting legislation through. Because, obviously, in California there's a supermajority, so they could probably railroad a lot of organizations throughout the state, but that's not good policy. And even here at PORAC, our mantra has always been, we're here for good policy, not good headlines. So that's really what we try to focus on and work on. And I think it's important that we try to elect candidates that also reflect that, because, crafting legislation that is good policy, it's good for our communities, it's good for law enforcement, and it's good for the social workers in a sense of making sure that the people that need help get the right help.
Yeah, unfortunately, too often it's folks want to be divisive because that creates headlines. It raises funds for their campaigns, and but it's a problem all the way around, and you really can't get anything accomplished when you're being divisive. But for some folks, that's their MO, and there are some folks in the Capitol who typically don't even have to read the language in their bill. We just automatically know it's probably not going to be good, and it's probably going to be divisive, and that's unfortunate.
Yes. In the last big race, obviously one of the most important races, and I think probably the biggest race in the state of California, was the Attorney General's race. We endorsed District Attorney Anne Marie Schubert. We did that based on the fact that she's a career prosecutor. She's not looking to seek higher office outside of being the best Attorney General that the state could possibly have. And she wants to hold people accountable, especially criminals, for their actions and the crime that they commit. So we were really disappointed that she didn't make the top two, because we really felt if she was in the top two, then it would have been a very good race. I think there would have been some great topics of discussion that we need to have in this state when it comes to crime and keeping our communities safe, where now I'm just not sure what the race is going to look like in November.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. We obviously believe she was the best candidate. She was more of a common sense approach. She was a prosecutor. That's what she did. She was about upholding the law and, the eyes of justice being blind, right? That's her. She really followed the law, and that's what we wanted up there. Unfortunately, I think what we're going to have is politics within the Attorney General's office, and that's really not where it belongs. But at the end, we're going to see how this plays out.
Yeah. And obviously, whoever gets in there will work with the best we possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like the elected officials throughout the state. And then, obviously, we had the speakers fight with Assemblymember Rivas coming out stating that he had the majority of caucus votes to be the next Speaker of the Assembly. So we're going to see how that plays out. That was a pretty interesting. It happened on a Friday, 3-day weekend, and then it came back, and then they spent 6 hours in caucus, and I guess we're in a wait and see.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what happens going forward. Obviously, we still have the rest of this legislative session to deal with, and we've with the help of Randy Perry and Aaron Reed, we've been really successful on the bills that we've targeted. I think taking advantage of the fact that it's an election year, but also that pendulum that we feel like is swinging. But it will be interesting to see what happens next year, what the legislation looks like next year, to really find out whether that pendulum is swinging and whether leadership is changing inside the Capitol. And, I'm excited to see what happens, cautiously optimistic, I guess.
There you go. No other races you want to talk about?
I think that we're going to have some races that we're going to be focused on going forward. We, definitely got to stay engaged, got to stay focused. We're going to be looking at some of our congressional races as well and make sure that we're focused there. And, we anticipate a change, at the federal level. We want to make sure we're engaged and that we continue to expand our footprint, not only here in the state of California, but also federally when it comes to law enforcement and that representation that we bring.
Yeah, and just to finish out with the speaker, that, like you said, it'll be interesting to see how that ultimately plays out and what happens during this year. With that said, though, and I know we talked a lot about endorsing candidates and stuff, so if there are candidates out there, especially at the chapters and your members, make sure you go to the chapter meetings, talk to your chapter presidents, fill out those questionnaires so we can start evaluating them and getting the candidates in. We definitely like candidates who to do ride-alongs with their local law enforcement. If they can get into the force option simulator, would be optimal. And then having some candid conversation with the local folks, because local chapters and regions make recommendations to the full board of directors for endorsements, especially on the state level. So we look forward to hearing from those. So again, I want to thank everybody for taking the time and listening to the PORAC podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Give us a follow on our social media platform and a thumbs up on whichever podcast platform you're using. As always, we'd like to close this out by thanking our nation's law enforcement. We hope you stay safe and have a great day. PORAC is California's largest law enforcement organization and the largest statewide association in the nation, representing over 77,000 public safety members since 1953. Our monthly podcasts, as well as past episodes, are available on PORAC.org, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, PORAC's YouTube channel, or where popular podcasts are downloaded. Be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms and tag us with your suggestions for future show topics. To learn more about our organization, visit us at PORAC.org. We are PORAC.